What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Throughout the history of Pokemon Go, PvP water-type starters have always been on top of the meta. It started out with Swampert, then Feraligatr came in. We know Primarina in Master League is fantastic. Blastoise as well has had play recently, but now Samurott is the new water-type starter on top. With the Fury Cutter changes here, this Pokemon is insanely spammy as well as it has a ton of fast pressure, so let's get into the battles and see what this Pokemon can do. Alright, let's get right on into it here. We see our Diggersby as our lead into a Shadow Annihilate, one of the worst lead matchups I could see here. I'm going to say swap our Shadow Drifblim. We are met by a Bastiodon. Are you joking me? This is probably the worst case scenario right now. Maybe there's a chance for us if I can get a shield down from this Bastiodon, though. I know that the Shadow Balls and Astonishes are going to add up, and as you can see, that is going to be a two-shot here if I can shield and reach the next one before getting completely farmed down. Our opponent throwing a charge move against us, likely a Stone Edge will knock us out if I ended up letting that go, but I want to get at least one shield down here, because if I can get shields down, potentially this game, I can use charge moves to knock out that Annihilate. Our opponent actually opts to let that move through, which is kind of interesting to me. I know there's another way that I can win this game, and that's by saving our Shadow Drifblim. I see a Wigglytuff come in, I instantly swap out to our Shadow Samurott, they bring in their Shadow Annihilate, and at this point, Shadow Drifblim has a lot of work to do, but I do see a path towards victory. In comes a Hydro Cannon, it does draw a shield from the Annihilate. I'm hoping right now that they throw energy against us. That's because if they don't have energy for our Shadow Drifblim, there's a chance, even on low HP, that I can farm them all the way down. In comes our Shadow Drifblim here, and yeah, look at this damage here. Astonish, doing so much of this Annihilate's HP, I'm able to farm them all the way down, potentially go for an Icy Wind as well against that Wigglytuff. We're just one Astonish away. Does one Charm knock us out? It does not. We debuff the Wigglytuff here, which might set us up for the endgame matchup in Diggersby versus Wigglytuff. In comes the Icy Wind. It does draw a shield here from that Wigglytuff, and now Diggersby against Wigglytuff. Who is going to win? I have debuffed them, but they have a lot of energy here, and I got a one-turn lag, which meant I'm not able to throw before this debuff. In comes the Icy Wind, down goes my attack stat, but potentially, because of how slow Wigglytuff is, there is a chance I can hang on long enough here to reach a Scorching Stance, as well as maybe two more Scorching Stance, or maybe just two more Fire Punch, depending on what is going to be enough here. In comes our first move, Fire Punch going to be thrown. I know they're pretty close to a Swift. I want to make sure I can get two Charge Moves off before potentially another move from them. So one Fire Punch is thrown, the next one will be able to knock them out. Diggersby somehow coming through in this endgame. Shadow Drifblim, though, I think was the MVP in this game. GG there to our opponent. All right, next game, we're going to see our Diggersby once again as our lead matchup into a Shadow Gligar. Very neutral lead here, but it is a little bit uncomfortable. I'd actually rather swap out if I could, saying I have a Shadow Drifblim in the backline. That is a hard answer to this Fury Cutter user, but I also have my Shadow Samurott, which while you would expect the Water type to be good into the Ground type Pokemon, down just a single Fury Cutter is all it takes to flip the 1s and 2s because of how much damage Air Release does and because they would pace just a little bit quicker than you. So I'm going to have to stay in here instead, sacrifice my Diggersby, and hope that there is no Dedenne in the backline. Fire Punches and Quick Attacks actually add up quite a bit here. If you're the Shadow Gligar, fun fact, if you go straight Air Release, you can actually win the Zero Shield matchup. Throwing Digs are not the way to go if you want to win the Zeros. Our opponent going for straight Dig here. I'm going to say swap our Shadow Samurott, try to bait out a Dedenne if they do happen to have it, and of course, they do. So we do bait it out, but this is still not the best spot to be in. I know Hydro Cannon will do a decent amount of damage to them, but they opt to shield, obviously, and the longer that this matchup plays out, the more their defense is going to increase, and the less damage I'm going to do. But after one defense increase, my Shadow Samurott's Fury Cutters are still able to do 2 damage per turn, which is a sizable amount of fast pressure. We have a bit of energy left over on our Diggersby, and our Hydro Cannon here draws their second shield. We're almost at the next Hydro. They actually let us reach this move. Is this enough to knock them out? I would be surprised after the defense boost that this Pokemon has. Yeah, they end up surviving. I tried to snap them down with Diggersby, but honestly, if I would have sniped them down with our Shadow Drifblim, we'd be in a much better spot. Now they have so much energy on that Dedenne. They also have an Azumarill that can farm us down. I should have gone for the Astonish down against that Electric-type Pokemon. Now there's going to be a lot more that I have to deal with in this endgame. Azu does have a decent amount of energy on it. Dedenne, though, it might be at 2 charge moves, and if that is the case, then I don't know if I can win this game even with a catch later on. I have to go for a Shadow Ball to knock out this Azumarill. I know it should be enough at this point. Our Shadow Drifblim has a lot of work to do this game. I'm going to hope that I can make a catch with our Shadow Samurott and see what we can do. Dedenne going to come back in here. One Fury Cutter, not enough to knock them out. Unfortunately, in comes a charge move against our Shadow Samurott. Do they have the second one, or are we going to be able to hang on and have a chance? No, it's going to have the second Parabolic Charge. I hate this stupid mouse. It's so annoying right now, but GG there to our opponent. I should have sniped it down with an Astonish earlier on, but well played to them. All right, next game, Diggersby into Talonflame. A little bit of a tricky lead matchup here. Shadow Samurott is our hard answer, but honestly, at this point, I know if I say swap my Shadow Samurott, I get so much of an energy lead if they don't swap out instantly, and in comes a Dunsparce, a Pokemon that is definitely not an answer to a Shadow Samurott. We have a full Hydro Cannon of energy. In fact, we have, I think, 2 Hydro Cannons almost here because our opponent was so slow on that swap. and because of that, I'm almost certain here that we can flip switch if we need to. That first Hydro Cannon, even potentially putting them into a range where I can just straight up Fury Cutter them all the way down. If I can shield once, farm down, save the energy on our Shadow Samurott, and use it against either the Talon or whatever else comes in, then maybe we'll be in a good spot here. I can see that they're already at another move, but they're not going to be able to get to a third before I'm able to farm them all the way down. We're going to have almost 100 energy on our Shadow Samurott. This matchup is so good for this Pokemon. In comes the Shadow Drapion. Maybe I should go for Mega Horn here because it would do a little bit more damage, but Shadow Hydro Cannon is going to come through and do a decent chunk as well. We're going to catch an Aqua Tail here on our Shadow Drifblim, knowing that at this point, our energy on Shadow Samurott is going to be very important. Aqua Tail comes through and does put us pretty low, but now Talon has to come in and throw a move pretty quickly if they don't want to take any extra fast pressure or potentially take an Icy Wind debuff. In comes a Fly, it knocks out our Drifblim, but we have so much energy left over on Shadow Samurott, I can just bring it back in here, get to 2 Hydro Cannons, and potentially just knock out this Talonflame. Diggersby not going to be too required to win this game. In comes our first Hydro Cannon, in comes the second. This will knock out the Talonflame, and while there is a Drapion in the backline, it's very low. I can either Fury Cutter or Quick Attack down. Our opponent does actually knock out our Samurott, unfortunately for us here, but one Quick Attack knocks him out. GG to our opponent. All right, next game, Diggersby into Shadow Marowak, battle of the opposing ground-type Pokemon. It is a little bit awkward. I have a water type as well as a Shadow Drifblim in the backline. That would be a bit better here. And if they have access to a Dedenne in the backline, this could be bad if I end up letting my ground type go. But because I know that Shadow Samurott is pretty squishy, and Bone Club as well as Mudslap would add up very quickly, I'm going to stay in here instead. Just try to maybe get a shield advantage or whittle down this ground type Pokemon if we can, and set up a farm down for my backline. Our opponent going for another move here. It's going to be a Bone Club. We can survive, though, because Diggersby is so bulky. In comes the Bone Club, and it does put us deep into the red, but we can reach another move here before getting knocked out. Do we get a shield, or at this point, will our opponent let this go? Scorching Sands coming through. Our opponent does shield the attack up. Honestly, that's fine by me at this point. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in Shadow Samurott, show the Pokemon that you could throw the ground type move into, and then catch it on our flying type. Now, while they do know my entire team at this point, I am going to be able to have a lot of energy across the board. A Wigglytuff in the backline, though not exactly what I wanted to see. Wigglytuff should be able to go for a 1-shield farm down, maybe even just a no-shield farm down against Shadow Drifblim, because this Pokemon is so tanky here, and especially after that debuff, while I am doing a lot of damage to them, they're going to get a lot of energy against us. My Shadow Samurott's now going to be permanently debuffed in the backline. That's not a great thing to say, but I think at this point, with the energy lead that I'll get, maybe there is still play for us in this match. I don't love shielding a double debuffed Icy Wind, but Shadow Samurott is pretty squishy. I might not have a lot of opportunity to shield this game. They've already had 2 very heavy fast food pressure Pokemon, and now I farm them all the way down. What do they have in the back? Marowak is still around as a catch opportunity, and there it is. They try to catch on us, but we're able to farm them all the way down. In comes the Bastiodon, and since we see this Pokemon on our screen, there is a chance for us to win this game as long as we can 2-shot them with Hydro Cannon. Now, I know that the Shadow would be able to normally do this, but because I do have my attack dropped by 1 stage, I'm not sure we have quite enough damage here. Yeah, it's not looking great. I have to now reach 2 more Hydro Cannons. I'm already at 1, but am I going to be able to reach another one after the one I'm throwing right now? This is going to come down to the wire. Samurott is pretty squishy. In comes the charge move, and can I reach the next one? Just barely we can. Shadow Samurott, way too spammy. Love to see that. Basti is going to go down. Another Basti Wiggly team. What is going on today in the Go Bad League? I don't know, but GG there to them. All right, next game, Diggersby into the Diggersby lead. A bit of an awkward lead. Once again, it's a matchup that I would rather have on my Drifblim or my Samurott, but I mean, I also don't mind playing out this lead matchup for a second here. If I get a debuff, that's very good for us. If I don't get a debuff, then, I mean, that's just how it normally seems to go. In comes the Scorching Sands. No debuff. Let's see if they get a debuff against us. Our opponent is being very smart and keeping up a bit of energy here as well. I know that being up this much energy means they can always outpace us to a move on Samurott if I do try to swap that in. And of course, they got the attack drop. You know, that's how this always seems to go. That's the reason I love Diggersby. It's just always such a fun mirror matchup here. They go for a Fire Punch, actually, of all things, which is kind of strange. I try to catch a move on our Drifblim. Doesn't quite work out. I guess we bait out the Dedenne, which is a Pokemon I needed to see in this matchup, or potentially bait out before my backline would see it. Our Diggersby is still around. It has a lot of energy. Parabolic Charge, though, going to be thrown, doing quite a bit of damage if I would have let that go. But now I'm going to go for an Icy Wind of my own, lower their attack stat. So while their defense stat might be increased, their attack is not going to do as much. This is still a little bit awkward, though. I know that our Diggersby in the backline, while it has energy, is not going to be that healthy. Potentially, I would get knocked out by a Play Rough, so I'm going to go for yet another debuff here and try to knock out this little mouse. In comes the Icy Wind. Our opponent does shield this up, and potentially a misplay from us here. I'm still getting used to this Pokemon that can boost its defense stat. I should have gone for the ground type move. I went for the fire one, and instead they survived the attack here. I don't know how much it would matter saying this Golisopod in the backline is honestly a little bit tricky for us to face off against. But man, I should have gone for Scorching Sands, just got rid of that Dedenne if I could have here. In comes another Fire Punch, and potentially, if my opponent gets greedy here, I can get to a third Fire Punch if they try to farm us all the way down. It's going to be really close. Can Diggersby do it? We try to reach for the move, but the Fury Cutters here just enough damage to knock us out. And now they have so much energy on this Golisopod. This is going to be so hard to win. They also do one extra Fury Cutter here. They don't take the Astonish. This is going to be such a hard farm down for a Shadow Samurott. At this point, I think they have us here. They have energy on their Dedenne, and they have energy on that Diggersby. This game is looking pretty over. X-Scissor comes through, does so much damage, and now Diggersby comes in to add insult to injury and knock out our Water-type Pokemon. Scorching Sands comes through, knocks out Samurott. GG there to our opponent. All right, next game, Diggersby into the Shadow Charizard lead. A little bit awkward, actually. I do have a Water-type Pokemon, but honestly, Samurott's not going to be the best counter to this, saying that we're using the Bug-type Fast Move Fury Cutter. Not going to have a lot of Fast Move pressure into them, and if I swap in down energy, then potentially they can outpace us to Dragon Claws. So instead, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to stay and sack our Diggersby, get a shield advantage, I guess, with that Scorching Sands. I know that Shadow Charizard is a very squishy Pokemon, which is why they wanted to shield. We call that they're not going to go for a Blast Burn, and once again, they have to go for a Blast Burn to knock us out here. If this is just a Dragon Claw, we actually end up surviving. They do go for the very risky bait once again, which means we survive the move. We go for the Scorching Sands at the last second. This should come close to knocking them out or putting them into a nice Astonish down range. We actually get the full Fast Food Farm down here. Down goes the Charizard, and for some reason, our opponent comes in with a Shadow Cradily. This is fantastic for Shadow Drifloon at this point, although potentially I should have gone for the Shadow Ball. It does do a bit more raw damage. If they no-shield this move, which they do end up doing, then now I'm in an awkward spot where I have to go down a shield, and I will not have that shield advantage that I did have a second ago, but because their final Pokemon is a Forretress, that doesn't really matter at this point. I'm going to go for another risky play here, go for another Icy Wind bait. It's not really risky, saying I have so much left in the tank on both my Drifloon and my Shadow Samurott, but I mean, if they would have no-shielded that move, it could have been a little bit more awkward to take him out, but now I can just shield this attack up, and well, I will be at -2 attack if this is another Rock Tomb. I think the Shadow Ball plus the Astonish damage is still going to be more than enough to knock out this Fortress before they can take me down. I don't even know if I need my Shadow Samurott in this game. Shadow Ball coming through does a massive amount of damage. We farm them down. That Cradily is still alive in the backline, but we have a couple of Astonishes that we can get off into them and knock them out. GG to our opponent. All right, next game, Diggersby up against the Shadow Gligar once again. As we've seen, we can't really swap out here, and as I've been saying, if you want to win the Zero Shield matchup as the Shadow Gligar, you actually have to go for 3 Aerial Aces. Let's see if our opponent does that, or if they go straight Dig. Then comes a charge move. They didn't throw very quickly, so it might be a Dig here, which is nice to see. It is going to be a Dig, good stuff, and now a Fire Punch will come through to try to strip them down just a little bit. Now, back in the day, this matchup was a little bit harder to play out as the Diggersby Quick Attack was not our fast move of choice for a long time. It used to be Mud Shot, which meant that we didn't have a lot of fast move pressure. But now we have both Fire Punch that got a buff as well as Quick Attack for the fast move pressure. This matchup is a lot more comfortable than it used to be. In comes another move here. It's going to be yet another Dig, which does put us pretty low, but we're actually able to go for a full farm down. In fact, save our Diggersby just in case there is a Dedenne in the backline. But no, instead our opponent comes in with a second Ground-type Pokemon, a Marowak. Not a Shadow Marowak, though, which means I think the fast move pressure is going to be just a little bit less frightening for a Shadow Samurott. Hydro Cannon does draw a shield, and I am a little bit worried at this point that our Shadow Drifloon's not going to have a lot of play in the backline, but I also am going to hope I survive this Bone Club. No, I don't. Unfortunately, probably should have shielded that move up, but now we can go for a farm down here, and look at that. Our opponent, they have their own Samurott in the backline. They're actually kind of triple weak to Shadow Drifloon this game. Fury Cutter doing absolutely no fast move pressure to us. I know I can farm this Pokemon all the way down in the 2 shields, go for the Shadow Ball to guarantee either a knockout or their final shield. Shadow Ball coming through. Our opponent goes for the shield, which I guess makes sense at this point. They don't want to have a Mud Slapper in the backline against my Drifloon with nothing else in the bank. So they do go for the shield. They get our final shield with this Hydro Cannon, but I can farm this all the way down, have a Shadow Ball ready for that Marowak, and we have some energy as well on our Diggersby. So even if this Shadow Ball is not enough damage, we should be able to win this game. Shadow Ball being thrown, our opponent with no shields remaining gets knocked out. Shadow Drifloon putting in so much work there in the backline. GG to our opponent. Next game, Dedenne in the lead. This is where I want to see this pesky little bugger. I know as long as I keep switch, I'm in a good spot. My opponent, though, safe swaps a Shadow Cradily, and honestly, I'm a little bit slow on the swap here, so at this point, I have to go for a Scorching Sands chip and dip, see what we can do here in the backline. In comes the Scorching Sands, and it does do a decent amount of damage. I really should have just instantly come in Shadow Samurott. It is counterintuitive to come into a Water type against a Grass type Pokemon, but with Fury Cutter, look at how much damage these fast moves are doing. We are going to be debuffed, and they're very close to another move here, so I do have to shield up that attack, go for this Hydro Cannon here before they can knock us out, and they actually opt to shield themselves. And that's fine by me. While my attack will be at -2, I can guarantee at this point that I can farm them all the way down, getting rid of a bit of a tricky Pokemon for our team, as well as having energy for that Dedenne later on this game. It actually is going to be the Dedenne, man, I can never say that Pokemon, the Dedenne that comes back in here. It's a Pokemon that is pretty squishy without any boosts, and while I am at -2 attack, you can see here that Hydro Cannon will get a 2-shot, which means my opponent, who has been a little bit greedy here, will end up getting knocked out. Hydro Cannon drawing their final shield, and they do get a full farm down, but Diggersby is probably one of the best Pokemon in the entire game to tank this energy, so I can come in, no shield, I don't have any shields remaining, obviously, but I can just go absorb all the energy, and if they swap out to something, swap into my Gligar, or into my Shadow Drifloon into this Gligar when I see it happen. Now, at this point, I know that Gligar is by no means a good matchup for a Shadow Drifloon. Well, for them, that is. Because these Air Releases are not enough to two-shot us here from the non-Shadow, and Fury Cutter no faster pressure into the Ghost and Flying-type Pokemon. So what I can do is I can just overfarm, get to 2 Icy Winds, 1 for this Gligar, and 1 for that pesky little Electric-type mouse in the backline. It's not often that you get to take out the Electric-type Pokemon with your Flyer, so might as well try to do it when you can. In comes the next Icy Wind. This will knock out the Dedenne. Jeez, dude. And I'll be able to knock them out here. It's a pesky Pokemon in many ways, especially the pronunciation. All right, well, next game here, we're going to see Dedenne into Dewgong, a Pokemon which is not amazing, actually, for a team now that I'm thinking about it. We're ABA weak to Ice types, and Dewgong's probably one of the best actual Ice types in the game when it comes to doing what an Ice type should. We have access, though, to Scorching Sands. Our opponent is staying in here, obviously, right? That's a pretty good matchup for them. I don't get a debuff, but our opponent actually swaps out to a Shadow Annihilate. Interesting play by them. I've seen Dewgong double Fighter in the past. Potentially, that is what our opponent has. Maybe they want to bait out our anti-fighter, and if that is the case, it's a smart play by them coming and Annihilate. But that said, because I get a full farm down here, that Dewgong is not going to be super happy about the Shadow Ball that I might throw into them. But I don't go for the Shadow Ball. I go for the stupid play. I bait them, then the stupid play plays off. We're able to go for the Icy Wind bait, lower their attack stat, and now that we got that shield from them as well, potentially we can survive the Ice Shard damage, go for a Shadow Ball here in just a second, and knock them out or draw their final shield. It's not often that a Flying-type Pokemon's able to do so much work into an Ice-type, but here we are, we flip switch advantage, and now Shadow Samurott can come in, go for a move here in just a second if we need to. Their attack is lowered, they're forced to go for Drill Run against us, so I know I'm not going to be permanently debuffed, and if I can, I want to throw a Hydro Cannon before they can get to a second move. At this point, it would be a little bit tempting for them to go for an Icy Wind, so that's why I didn't want to have to even play that mind game. In comes the Hydro Cannon and knocks out the Dewgong, and their second Pokemon is a Primeape. We can easily beat that with our Samurott. GG to our opponent. Next game, a Forretress in the lead. Our team's actually pretty strong into this Pokemon. I'd say our one bad matchup here would be our Shadow Samurott, our opponent safe swapping a Gastrodon, and we have our Shadow Drifloon as one of the best counters to this Pokemon in the entire game. They did build up to 6. There's a chance here this is a Water Pulse, and that actually is going to be the moveset that they're on, which is a little bit awkward for us. So now I have to throw a move here against them if I want to knock them out before we end up taking another charge move. If they did have Body Slam, potentially that could put us into a farm down range. So we knock them out with that Shadow Ball. They come back in with the Fortress, which is kind of a crazy play, saying they have no fast move pressure into us whatsoever, and we already reach another Shadow Ball. If they let this through, that's going to do a massive amount of damage to them, nearly one-shots actually. In comes a Goodra, a little bit of a tricky Pokemon in the backline, but we have our Shadow Samurott as well as our Diggersby. I guess they didn't want to play it out. GG there to our opponent. Next game here, the Diggersby Mirror matchup. This time I'm not going to play it out. I'm going to instantly swap out to a Shadow Samurott because every time I play out that Diggersby Mirror, it's a very annoying spot to be in. Our opponent actually makes a nice catch on a Jellicent, it looks like. But I mean, the thing is, I'd go for a Hydro Cannon against this anyway, so it's just that I don't get the move off against the Diggersby. That is the more annoying part about that. In comes the fast move pressure from us, and honestly, look at the fast moves here. We're able to do quite a bit of damage, just chipping them down with resisted Fury Cutters. And I think a second Hydro Cannon, as well as a couple more Fury Cutters here, will eventually put them into farm down range. We do shield up our Shadow Samurott. I know flipping switch advantage could be very helpful for us right now. They actually opt to let that move go. We have yet another Hydro Cannon. Do they shield this move, or at this point, will they let their Jellicent go? They do shield, so now I think I'm going to be fine going for a 1 shield, or a 2 shield rather, farm down, knock them out here, and get a ton of energy against whatever they might have in the back. We have a bit of energy remaining on that Diggersby, so if that Pokemon does come back in, I'm going to go for an instant Hydro Cannon here, and potentially, I mean, I could come in Shadow Drifloon, but they have a lot of energy left over. I'm actually going to come back in with our own Diggersby. This could be a bad play depending on what they have in the backline, but I know at this point it would be a little bit tricky for our Drifloon to take 2 or 3 undebuffed Fire Punches from this Pokemon, so just come back in Diggersby here, go for my own Scorching Sands. Hopefully one day I'll get the better side of these debuffs here. Scorching comes through. It does not debuff them. We haven't been debuffed ourselves just yet, but another Scorching Sands being thrown. Potentially this is where we get our debuff. In comes the Scorching, or Diggersby. Of course, yeah, debuff. Love to see that. Honestly, it's kind of comical how many times I play out this matchup and how many times I have the bad end of it. In comes our next Scorching Sands here. It does knock out the Jellicent because they make a nice catch, but potentially we're still in a decent spot depending on what they have in the backline. Shadow Drifblim has a lot of play in this meta in the Zero Shield matchup. They throw a move against us very last second here. What's it going to be? Is it a Scorching Sands? It is. It doesn't quite knock us out, but I can come in with our Shadow Drifblim. By the way, they got another debuff for that Scorching Sands. I love to see it. And now we can go for an Icy Wind here in just a second. Our opponent actually threw on alignment, giving us a full free Astonish, which is fantastic to see here, but I don't want to take another move if I can help it. While a Shadow Ball likely one-shots whatever's in the backline, I know if I take another Fire Punch, there's a chance we're just in like farm down range from a Ghost type from a lot of different Pokemon. It is going to be a Ghost type here in the backline, and I know I just barely cannot outpace this Dusclops to a Shadow Ball. I'm going to go for the Icy Wind instead, and the thing is, Dusclops, while it is a very spammy Pokemon, if I have one residual energy on my Samurott, I can outpace him to the next Shadow Punch. I don't know if I have that much energy here or not. If I do, then I can just come in Shadow Samurott and win the game. If I don't, which it looks like I don't, I have to go for a catch here. We go for the catch. The Shadow Punch has been caught on the normal type Pokemon. A very inefficient use of energy from our opponent. Down goes our Diggersby. We now are just one Fury Cutter away from this next Hydro Cannon. We can knock out this Ghost type Pokemon. Samurott cleaning up this endgame there. GG to our opponent. And with that, that was the final game of the day here. I think Shadow Samurott is a very fun safe swap. It's very similar to what like Shadow Gator used to play out like. It's not as much like Blastoise where you have a lot of bulk to it. It's pretty squishy. It's a Pokemon that you almost certainly have to invest shields into. And Shadow Drifblim, I think, was another star of the show today. Diggersby is one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the meta. Pairing it up with these two squishy Pokemon was, I think, a very fun and a very solid idea. So if you want a team to climb right now early on in the season, give this one a go. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.